Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. I'm Shep, and we're back with a new project, and this one's actually a shop project we're real excited about, and that's this 2004 FXDXI that we've got sitting here on the lift. I'm going to talk a little bit about this bike and what the plan for it is, which I'm really excited about. But first off, a little housekeeping note. Our camera we normally use to shoot the YouTube videos with just decided to shit the bed this morning. So we're shooting this one on an iPhone while we wait for the new camera to arrive. So I'm hoping it works well. So if the quality of this isn't as great as it might otherwise be, just bear with us. I think tomorrow we should have the new camera and we'll be back to where we normally are. Who knows? Maybe the iPhone's better than what we've been doing. I have no idea. Anyway, enough of that, onto the bike. So we obviously love Dynas here at the shop. I love Dynas personally, and the opportunity to buy this bike we just couldn't pass up. Little promo here. We bought this bike from the Dyna dude, Brandon. He's in New York, which is where we are too, but he ships bikes nationally. He's got awesome Dynas all the time, FXRs as well. Any kind of cool bike you're looking for, he's got. So hit him up. Instagram is where to find him. The Dyna dude is his username. Anyway, onto this bike. So what we've got here is a fairly unique FXDX, which the FXDX obviously is a fairly small run of Dynas. They're not unique. I mean, there are a lot of FXDXs out there. Harley made them for several years, but this one is a particular favorite of mine, and the reason for it is that I letter I mentioned at the end. This is a fuel-injected FXDX. So obviously a 2004. These are not that common. Most of the DXs that you see are prior to 2004, so no fuel injection available. Harley started introducing fuel injection as an option for the Dynas in 2004. So this bike came as a carbureted version and a fuel-injected version, and we've got the fuel-injected version. So while others may favor a carburetor for one of many reasons, we're a fuel injection shop. It's how we tune. I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to get one of these with fuel injection from the factory. So the plan was to do a pretty cool build on a DX. That build was going to be sort of the budget kind of stunt bike Dyna build, kind of the ethos being everything you need and nothing you don't. That's morphed a little bit into what you're going to see now, but we're going to try and keep it to that. The reason some of that changed is, hopefully you can see behind me, this bike is just too nice. Even I feel a little bit bad about even modifying it all because it is so stock and so clean. It's got super low miles on it. It was obviously owned by an older owner, as you might be able to tell by the very little customization that was done to it. But it is one of the cleanest bikes of this age I think I've ever seen. So this is our platform and this is what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we are gonna do on this build. So it's not gonna be a budget build necessarily. We're not going cheap, we're not cutting corners, we're gonna do everything the right way. But a little bit different than what we've maybe done on some of our shop projects before is we're gonna try and really not spend money that doesn't need to be spent. So we're gonna not get every billet part we can get. We're gonna skip all the ARP hardware. We're not necessarily gonna start tearing into things that don't need to be done. What we're gonna do is set this bike up that you can really rip it and have it be kind of a stunt bike. And honestly, we're gonna do the crash protection and all that stuff because we were looking for a bike where we could learn how to do some new stuff on, and while this is maybe too nice a bike that you don't want to drop on the ground, we're gonna put the crash protection on because this bike likely will get dropped on the ground in the life that we have planned for it. So I feel a little bit bad, like I said, about taking one so clean to do that with, but those are the brakes and this is the one we got. So that's where we're gonna go. So we're gonna do everything from back to front that you'd wanna do on a bike to get it set up for stunting. So if that's something you're looking to do for yourself, you're looking to buy a Dyna and do what needs to be done and not waste any money, this is definitely the build for you because you're gonna see us kind of go through each thing and we'll talk about why we're doing everything we're doing and what the benefit is or what the value is in doing it. So that's the kind of main focus of the build, and that's what we're gonna do, and hopefully you'll get a sense of that as we go through. I'm gonna try and break this into a little bit of a series so that we can get a little bit more in depth into some of the things that we're gonna do on this one. But what I wanna do right now, before we start getting into the teardown, is talk a little bit about the condition of the bike and also some of the stuff that we've got planned. So obviously, like I mentioned, this bike is pretty much stock, right? So there are a few things that were done to this, but everything else is really, really, really original. So typically on these older, older customer bikes, there are certain things you'll see that were done. And I love buying used Dynas that were owned by somebody older because it means they weren't beaten up. They're probably ridden pretty mildly and they're gonna be in pretty good shape. So some of the things you normally see, forward controls is one that's huge. The previous generation of Dyna owners loved taking mids off and putting forwards on. In this case, we still have the original factory mids, albeit with Harley P&A foot pegs that we're gonna take off, but it's just a step we don't have to take to go back from forwards to mids, which is really great. So what this customer did do, obviously, I mentioned these foot pegs. They put all the little matching sort of chrome and rubber passenger foot pegs, forward or highway pegs, little chrome doodads. You've got your chrome axle nut covers on the rear. It's got them in the front as well. That's basically it. There's also, this is a funny one, these little chrome like stick-on covers on the calipers. I've seen them before, but usually on a bike that's got more modification done to it, it's a little bit funny that whoever decided, I'm not gonna change anything about the bike, but what I need is chrome covers on my caliper logos. So go figure, I really don't know. But still, stock air cleaner, stock pipes, stock seat, stock bars. These tires, checking the date code, are the original tires from the bike from 2005. Literally everything else other than a few little, kind of bolt-on things is original on this bike. So that's pretty cool. So we're gonna change a lot of things, but because I do have I don't know, at least a little bit of regard for the fact that this is a pretty original bike, unlike what we do with a lot of the other bikes we work on where all the parts kind of go in a big pile, we use them for other things or we sell them or whatever, everything that's original, I mean, not these kind of P&A things, the little chrome doodads, but all the original stuff that we take off this bike, these shocks, anything like that, it's all gonna go and get put away and stored so that we have all the original stuff for this bike in the event that we ever wanted to sell it and have that stuff go with it or whatever the case might be. I'm not planning on just getting rid of a lot of this stuff. So, what are we gonna do on this bike? Well, we got a lot planned for it and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about it. So there are a number of things that you're gonna wanna do, and I think, if you've watched any YouTube videos or seen these bikes or whatever, there's a lot of sort of quintessential things that a bike that's getting built like this is gonna have done to it. So let's talk about some of those. Number one, T-bars. Obviously we're gonna do that. We're not gonna do the typical Kraus riser and FM bars that we do on a lot of other bikes. We're gonna spend a little less money and just get what we need. We're also gonna make sure we get a height that is not too high. Really, lower is actually a little bit better when it comes to this. So, for somebody my height, typically I like on a Dyna 12, maybe a little bit higher, 12 inches, 13 inches, somewhere in there. We're gonna go a little lower, probably closer to 9 or 10 on these. So we're gonna do bars. Obviously that's gonna involve grips and levers and all that other kind of stuff. We'll see. I haven't decided what we're gonna do in terms of like the turn signals and all that. Might wanna get rid of it, might wanna leave them, see how I feel when we get there. Obviously we're gonna move our gauges up along with that. So T-bars is a big one. Suspension, obviously a big one as well. So I can't bring myself to replace an original DX front end. They're obviously much better than a stock Harley front end, but the technology's come a long way since then. So if you wanted to put a better front end on this, you could. I'm gonna leave the stock DX front end. Once we get it done, we'll ride it a little bit and see if maybe we wanna upgrade the internals, do springs, something like that. But for the moment, we're just gonna leave that front end by itself and leave it alone. Again, not trying to overspend, just do what we have to. On the rear, definitely gonna get this height up and give us a shock with more travel. Again, the premium DX adjustable shocks are better than typical stock Harley shocks, but they're not as good as what we can put on, and they're certainly not as tall. So we've got a nice tall set of shocks to go on there, and we'll talk about that. Again, not doing the Öhlins that we normally do. We're going a slightly different direction. So talked about T-bars, talked about shocks. Obviously, got to get a step-up seat. We had Saddleman put one together for us. That's really a really nice basic seat that's going to complement this bike really well. We'll show you that. Continuing to talk about some of the other typical stuff. I'm not going in any particular order here. Chain drive, we're definitely going to do on it. So we'll have the primary open, and we're not going to go crazy with a whole bunch of stuff there. We're just going to put a chain kit on that's going to match this motor nicely and do what we want to do for the build. And a little bit of extra stuff that we're gonna do just to clean things up. So try and get some things off that we don't wanna break. So these turn signals, these are gonna go. We'll replace them with an integrated tail light just for aesthetics. We'll put a lay down plate bracket on here to have it look a little bit better. Trying to think what else. I'm pausing on talking about the motor for the moment. We'll get to that at the end. The pipes obviously have to go, just because we got to put a pipe on there. Again, same concept. Normally we run HPI pipes on all of our stuff. Well, on this bike, we're planning on maybe messing it up a little bit. We're gonna put on a little bit less expensive, but still a really nice pipe that I've been really looking to try on something and see what it does on the dyno. So we've got a pipe plan for it that's a little different than we normally do. We are going to eliminate the forward, or not forward controls, but highway pegs. I don't know why I can't keep saying that. Highway pegs are gonna go, and we're gonna replace that with a crash bar, give us a little bit of crash protection. And we're also gonna match that crash protection in the rear with doing some rear shock mount sliders to keep the bike off the ground if it goes down. So back up here at the front, one of the things that I just really wanted to deal with is I really want to get as much good brakes as we possibly can, right? So we're not spending a huge amount of money here, but maybe a little bit more than you have to. And so that's where things kind of snowballed a little bit. So we happen to have, that were takeoffs off of another bike, one of mine actually, a set of Bagger Brembos. So we're gonna put those Bagger Brembos on in place of the stock calipers. So it's kind of a $0 expense for us. If you wanted to go buy a set of those, you can get them for about 200 bucks or so. So one thing that you gotta remember, and a lot of people don't do it, is really, if you're gonna put those bigger calipers on, you need to change your rotors to a larger rotor, which is beneficial to you, but a lot of people don't realize it. So these Dynas came with 11.5-inch rotors, but when you put those bigger calipers on, the pads are gonna overhang the outside of the rotor, and you gotta go to an 11.8-inch rotor, which is what the Baggers ran. So we got ourselves an inexpensive but nice looking set of 11.8 rotors to go on the front to match this. And just because we want the aesthetics to be right, we bought a stock size 11.5-inch rear rotor that matches the front. But we're gonna leave this caliper in place, although hopefully get this little sticker doodad off here. So that's a lot of the stuff we're gonna do. I'm sure there's more parts sitting there in the pile that I've kind of forgotten about, but hopefully it gives you an idea of where we're starting to go with this. Now, with the motor, this is what I wanted to talk about, and this is where maybe we're going a little bit further than what you would normally do if you were just trying to sort of do it on a budget. If you're doing this on a budget, you'd leave the motor alone. There's really no reason that you need a whole lot of power and to build a big, hairy motor to go out and do wheelies, burnouts, all that stuff. Granted, a lot of the guys doing it have big motors, but if you know what you're doing, you can do it on a stock bike just as easily, maybe more easily than one with a lot of power. So that said, we're gonna do it because we want to. I just, it's a stock twin cam 88, doesn't make much for power. So we're gonna do some work on it. What that work is where it gets a little bit complicated. So obviously these bikes have the mechanical chain tensioners in there. So one of the main reasons we wanna do the motor is just to get those out. So we have a couple of options in terms of where we wanna go. We can do a hydraulic chain tensioner conversion from fueling and run their conversion camshafts, which is probably the most likely scenario. But we're gonna pull all this apart, and if there's a chance that we can run gear drive cams, we'll do that. So we're gonna pull everything out. We haven't ordered any of the engine components yet. So we're gonna take everything apart. We're gonna check the run out on the pinion shaft. If this was an earlier DX and 02 that still have the Timken bearing bottom end, you'd have a much better shot of having a crank that was in spec to run gears. It's pretty unlikely that this crank is gonna be good enough to do that, but I've got my fingers crossed and we're gonna check it and see where we land. So really, that would be a reasonable place to stop, is just to put a bolt-in cam in there just to spice up the 88 a little bit and put it all back together and go. But just because we want to do things just a little bit different because it's a shop bike, we are going to just go ahead and do the top end as well. We're not going to get any head work done. We're not going to start doing compression releases. We're not going to, port anything. We're going to leave the heads exactly as they are. We're just gonna do a big bore kit on it, and we're gonna go from this twin cam or a stock 88, we're gonna go up to a 98 most likely. So nothing super, super crazy, just as long as we got everything apart. It's just easy for us to just go ahead and just do the pistons and cylinders now, just to make this bike a little different than maybe the ones, that anybody else might have. So we're gonna The motor will be its own project. We'll probably do a video on that. We've got, probably do videos on all the various components we're doing, just so you can kind of see how to do one of these for yourself if you're looking to go buy a Dyna and turn it into a little ripper. So, this isn't going to be a huge power monster. It's not going to be a show winner. That's not the bike we're building here. We're building a bike that I think a lot of people are looking to do. So I'm trying to show you how you can do it, sort of not on a budget necessarily, but everything you need and nothing you don't. So that's where we're at. What I'm gonna do is start to do a little bit of tear down on this bike and get some stuff that we don't need out of the way. And we'll check back in with whatever the first project is gonna be. Haven't quite decided yet. To be honest with you, the first thing I'm probably gonna do is open up this cam compartment and see what we got going on in there. So at least we have some sense of what we gotta do with the motor. So stick around, I'm gonna do some tear down and we'll cut back and pick it up from there. All right, so just like that, we took our DX from fully assembled and just off the road to pretty well torn down. We started kind of with the outside stuff and worked our way in. Obviously the pipes came off, our air cleaner, we got the foot controls off, all that good stuff. Tank is obviously drained and removed so we can get access to the rocker boxes. It's also gonna help us with the handlebar installation. I'll get to that a little later in the video. But basically what we did here was took the rocker boxes off so we could get the push rods out without cutting them. We pulled the components out of the cam chest and we're set up here with our dial indicator so we can check the run out on the pinion shaft. And really all of this disassembly for right now was in an effort to get to this point to see what the health of the core of this bike was. So now that I've kind of given you the overview of where we're at, I'll bring the camera in and I'll show you where we are in terms of run out on this pinion shaft, and that's going to determine where we go next. Okay, so I've got the camera set up really well zoomed in here. What I'm going to do is turn the rear wheel to turn the motor over rather than turning this bolt here, just so I can get the camera in nice and close and I don't block it, and you'll be able to see exactly what we're seeing in terms of pinion shaft run out. So obviously what we're looking at is the number of thousandths that this needle is going to move as we turn that rear wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And hopefully you're seeing the same thing that I saw, which is that this is an incredibly healthy crank. Really happy with what we're seeing there. And this is gonna help us determine where we go from here, moving on to the next steps. So I'll reposition, we'll talk a little bit about it. Okay, so we just looked at the pinion shaft run out, which much to my surprise, although maybe having my fingers crossed really helped, we've got 0.02 of run out on this pinion shaft, which is crazy unlikely and really just totally awesome. The earlier bikes, your 02 and earlier bikes with the Timken bearing bottom ends, you're much more likely to find that scenario than you are on a bike like this, but we just got lucky with this one, honestly. So this 04's doesn't have that bottom end, but you saw it just as I did. We're looking at 0.02 of run out, which really means that we can kind of do whatever we want with this motor. Now, like I said, originally my plan was, maybe just a cam, and then I kind of said we're gonna do a big bore kit because why not? Well, now we really have some more options in terms of running a gear drive setup rather than a chain drive setup, which means that without going crazy and doing, big head work, we could do a little bit of head work, and by that I mean basically just a valve job and put some bigger valve springs in it, and we'll be able to run a cam with a lot more lift to it and be able to make a lot more power out of this motor at the same size. So at that same time, we'll be able to get the compression up a little bit. Obviously, this bike does not have automatic compression releases, so you're basically looking at either, if you're wanting more compression, either an S&S Easy Start cam or putting manual compression releases in the heads. So I've got another 05 Dyna, probably seen it on the channel before. That's got a pretty badass motor in it. And that one was built before we opened the shop. Jimmy at HPI built that one. That's got 585 easy starts in it with a gear drive setup. So in an effort not to build the exact same bike twice, we're gonna try and do something a little bit different. So we're gonna kind of pause on the motor discussion for now. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get the rest of the top end torn down so that we can kind of just see what everything looks like and get ready for what's to come. But basically, I think our next step is gonna be, after we get all this torn down, we'll kind of cover it up. And while the motor stuff is being dealt with, we'll touch base on that at another time, we'll just jump into doing some of the other upgrades that need to be done all around the bike, and there are plenty. So With that said, I'm going to end it here for today, and we will check back in with another update pretty soon, and hopefully you'll still be following along with us.